From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. This is Dateline Malacañang. As Tropical Storm Aghon moves across the country, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Sunday urged the public to stay vigilant and prioritize their safety. In a social media post, the President said, "The well-being of the Filipino people is the government's utmost priority." The Chief Executive has directed all relevant government agencies, including local government units or LGUs and emergency services, to work tirelessly in monitoring the situation and providing necessary assistance. President Marcos urged everyone to look out for one another, especially the vulnerable ones, as he assured the country will get through this challenge as one. Meanwhile, President Marcos assured that over 1.2 million pesos in humanitarian assistance have been given to persons affected by Typhoon Aghon, while around 3 billion pesos worth of standby funds and pre-positioned goods and stockpiles to ensure wider and faster assistance to affected communities. According to the Philippine Atmospheric Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration or PAGASA, Tropical Depression Aghon has intensified into a tropical storm over Tayabas Bay on Sunday. Signal warnings have been raised to different areas affected by the storm. PAGASA said Aghon is expected to retain typhoon status until it leaves the Philippine area of responsibility on Wednesday.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is set to travel to Brunei, Darussalam, and Singapore this week. In a pre-departure briefing in Malacañang, Department of Foreign Affairs or DFA Assistant Secretary Eileen Mendiola Rao said, "The President was invited by Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah for a state visit from the 28th to the 29th of May. The Chief Executive will meet with the Filipino community in Brunei and is also expected to have a meeting with the business sector to promote trade and investment relations between the two countries." From Brunei, President Marcos, along with First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, will go directly to Singapore for a working visit and speak at the 2024 International Institute for Strategic Studies or IISS Shangri-La Dialogue. The IISS Shangri-La Dialogue is an important gathering in Asia which is centered on talks on security, not only in the region but the whole world.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and First Lady Luisa Araneta Marcos will be conducting their state visit to Brunei Darussalam from 28 to 29 May 2024. And directly afterwards, the first couple will be flying directly to Singapore, where the President will be undertaking a working visit to Singapore to deliver the keynote address of the 21st edition of the IISS Shangri-La Dialogue. This would be the President's first state visit to Brunei Darussalam. This year marks 40 years of relations between the Philippines and Brunei Darussalam, as both countries established bilateral relations in 1984. Aside from the robust bilateral relations between our two countries, Brunei is the Philippines' close partner in a number of multilateral organizations, particularly in ASEAN and in the BIMP-IAGA. Our ties are multifaceted, encompassing cooperation in defense and security, maritime, agriculture, and trade, as well as people-to-people relations. This state visit is a signal of our vibrant relations as both countries conducted the Joint Commission for Bilateral Cooperation chaired by the DFA last year. This state visit will provide an avenue for both leaders to take stock of the progress of our commitments and ongoing bilateral undertakings and fine-tune them accordingly. Aside from being part of the tradition of the ASEAN leaders visiting fellow ASEAN countries, this state visit is in line with the President's commitment to continue exploring avenues for economic growth and job opportunities for Filipinos, as the Business Forum is aimed to boost trade and investments into the country. Meanwhile, the working visit in Singapore will see the President deliver the keynote address to the 21st edition of the Shangri-La Dialogue. Only one leader delivers this address every year, and President Marcos was given the distinct honor for this year's Shangri-La Dialogue. As Ambassador Daza mentioned, this dialogue is attended by multiple stakeholders in the defense sphere, ranging from heads of governments, heads of states, and defense ministers to industry players. Through this platform, the Philippines will have the opportunity to provide these stakeholders an important source of accurate, objective information on international strategic issues important to the region. We expect about 40 countries to be attending this Shangri-La Dialogue with about 500 participants. On the sidelines of the visit, the President will also meet with the new Singaporean President as well as with the new Singaporean Prime Minister, who was just sworn in just last week, May 15. This year also commemorates the 55 years of Philippines-Singapore diplomatic relations, and the meeting between the new Singaporean leaders and the President comes at this very auspicious juncture. Also, very recently, if you recall, Singaporean Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan was also in Manila, and this is all part and parcel of our celebration of the 55 years. This swing visit demonstrates that the President's commitment to ensuring a peaceful, secure, and prosperous Philippines for all of our country here and abroad.
You just heard Department of Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary Eileen Mendiola Rao.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has ordered the Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, to help the families of the 20 Filipino mariners affected by the Red Sea attacks. The President said the government should ensure the needs of the said families. According to DMW Secretary Leo Magpayo, he immediately complied to the directives of the Chief Executive, and they are already in touch with the families of the seafarers. Iranian authorities have taken 3 Filipino seafarers on board the container ship MSC Aris, while the remaining 17 Filipino seafarers were held captive by Houthi rebels that attacked the vessel in the Red Sea. Secretary Magpayo clarified that the Filipino seafarers are safe and is in constant communication with their families. Magpayo said that 3 of the Filipino seafarers have already returned to their families, while the 17 Filipino crewmen are in the Galaxy Leader and in stable condition. The DMW Secretary expressed his thanks to the Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, for its support for ensuring the safety of the Filipino seafarers.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW Secretary Leo Magpayo promised to uphold its mandate that was entrusted to him by President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and the Constitution. This was Kakdak's statement after he thanked the president for reappointing him as ad interim secretary of the DMW. In a statement, Secretary Kakdak said, its mandate is clear that the agency should monitor the rights, safety, as well as protect overseas Filipino workers or OFWs. Kakdak added that they will never stop to ask justice for defenseless OFWs abroad. To recall, the ad interim appointment of Kakdak was bypassed by the Commission on Appointments or CA due to lack of time. Before this, President Marcos appointed Kakdak as ad interim secretary of the DMW in April this year, 7 months after he was designated as officer in charge of the department in September of 2023. He was designated DMW officer in charge after the passing of former Secretary Susan Toots Ople in August last year. Kakdak served as Undersecretary of the DMW, Executive Director 5 of the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA, Executive Director 5 of the Philippine Employment Administration, Philippine Overseas Employment Administration or POEA, Undersecretary of the Department of Labor and Employment or DOLE, and Deputy Executive Director 5 of the POEA.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, the Philippines expressed serious concern over Beijing's latest move, saying that China's new policy of detaining trespassers in the waters that it claims is a direct violation of international law. In a statement, the Department of Foreign Affairs or DFA said, China cannot enforce its own laws within a sovereign state's territory. The DFA said every sovereign state has the right to formulate and enact laws, including the enforcement of domestic legislation within its jurisdiction, but added that these same domestic laws cannot be applied nor enforced in the high seas under international law. The DFA pointed out that China's new regulations are issued based on the 2021 Coast Guard law, which also illegally expanded the maritime law enforcement powers of China's Coast Guard. It also raised concerns over China's regulations on administrative law enforcement procedures for Coast Guard agencies, which was approved and announced on May 15th and is supposed to take effect on June 15th. The policy reportedly allows the China Coast Guard to detain for up to 60 days without trial perceived foreign trespassers who will cross what it claims are its borders. The new policy came after the Atin Ito, or in English, This Is Ours coalition, held a civilian convoy on May 15th to the 17th to Scarborough Shoal or Bajo de Masinloc in the West Philippine Sea or WPS, which forms part of the vast South China Sea that Beijing entirely claims as its own. The DFA also asked China to ensure that its relevant legislation clearly reflects and abide by its commitments and obligations under international law, particularly the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea or UNCLOS and the binding 2016 Arbitral Award on the South China Sea, as well as the 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. At the same time, it reiterated its call for China to comply with international law and desist from any action that would undermine peace and stability in the region. President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. recently said China's new policy is completely unacceptable, adding that the Philippines would take whatever measures to protect Filipinos amid escalating tensions in the contested waters.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, on Monday reported that 12,000 families, or 26,726 individuals, have so far been affected by Typhoon Aghon. This is based on the latest data of the DSWD's Disaster Response Operations Monitoring and Information Center. Among the regions affected are Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Western Visayas, Central Visayas, and Eastern Visayas. In relation to this, 2,500 families, or 8,839 individuals, the Philippines Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, on Monday reported that 12,000 families, or 26,726 individuals, have so far been affected by Typhoon Aghon. This is based on the latest data of the DSWD's Disaster Response Operations Monitoring and Information Center. Among the regions affected are Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Western Visayas, Central Visayas, and Eastern Visayas. In relation to this, 2,500 families, or 8,839 individuals, are currently staying at 165 evacuation centers, while over 5,000 individuals are temporarily staying with their relatives. There were also 4 houses severely damaged by the storm, while 18 others were partially damaged. The DSWD is continuously monitoring those affected by the storm and has also allotted an initial amount of 1.3 million pesos worth of assistance. A total of 608 million pesos in standby funds is also available, as well as 1.6 million food packs that are pre-positioned in various locations across the country.
Dateline Malacañang.
3 were confirmed to have died during the onslaught of rains brought about by Typhoon Aghon in southern Luzon, or the Calabarzon region. Based on reports by Area Police Command, Southern Luzon Chief, Police Lieutenant General Roderick Armamento, to Philippine National Police, or PNP Chief, Police General Romel Francisco Marbil, among those that died was a man that was crushed by a falling acacia tree in the village of Sampaga, San Antonio, Quezon Province. A child was also found dead in a watery area of Sitio Resettlement in the town of Ilayang Polo in Pagbilao. Another male individual was also dead after a bully tree fell on his stomach while he was sleeping in the village of Ibabang, Iyam in Lucena City. Meanwhile, Armamento also reported that 2,923 families, or 11,941 individuals, have evacuated their homes due to the effects of the storm in Calabarzon. According to the Office of the Civil Defense, or OCD, they are currently investigating if the casualties are attributed to the storm.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Philippines Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, is closely monitoring the tensions between China and Taiwan. According to DMW Secretary Leo Magpayo, they are coordinating with the Manila Economic and Cultural Office, or MECO, Labor Attaché, and the Filipino community in Taiwan. The Secretary assured that there are measures and steps ready with their contingency plan in case the situation intensifies in the country. Secretary Kakdak did not give details to the plans, as this will only be determined depending on the situation on the ground. Based on data from the DMW, there are over 153,000 Filipinos in Taiwan, and 90% of the number are overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs. Meanwhile, Kakdak reported that the Philippines was able to record an all-time high deployment of Filipino seafarers in 2023. In a forum, Secretary Kakdak said over 500,000 seafarers were deployed. That's why the demand for maritime seafarers continue. This leaves around 30% of Filipino seafarers who are still in the country awaiting deployment. Kakdak said the high number of deployed Filipino seafarers last year was not affected by the issues hounding the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, we would like to invite everyone to come and visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel at Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You will be able to hear and view our Filipino and English programs, including news updates here in the Philippines. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our posts as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.